Hello and welcome to today's show. And I couldn't be more excited to be joined by my dear friend, Sara Harbert. Welcome, Sara. Nice to see you.
Hi, Lindsay. Thanks for having me on.
You are so welcome. And I'm so grateful that we get to have this conversation today because, as always, we've got millions of things to talk about. And I hope that this will be one of many conversations that help other people on their journey by sharing some of the things that we've experienced and also some of the things that we've learnt along the way. So, without further ado, Sara, before I do you a disservice by introducing you incorrectly, I just wanted to say that I'm incredibly grateful to you for everything that we've shared so far, our spiritual journey, our sophrology journey, our parenting, wifing journeys. And this is a real treat to have this conversation. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
My pleasure.
Sara, rather than me introduce you, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself very quickly?
Sure. I was born and raised in the US. I now live in Geneva, Switzerland. Before that, I was 3 years in the French Alps, and before that, 12 years in London. So my adult life has been in Europe. I'm a wife of 12 years now, a mom of two children, ages 7 and 8. I'm a yoga teacher, a health coach, and in my spare time, try to coach dance. Yeah, I'm passionate about skiing, mountain biking, and love doing anything in the mountains, from mushroom foraging to hiking. And yeah, that's about it.
Amazing. So I think it's always really tricky when we begin to put labels on ourselves, and you and I have talked about this a lot. You've obviously got a wealth of experience, as we both have, and I think it's always quite challenging to know where to start. We're talking today, obviously, the name of the podcast gives it away, human, the rich simplicity of being yourself. We're talking really about being human and what that means to us. And I just wonder if you might start from your perspective as a health coach. What do you think people are struggling with at the moment in today's post pandemic world that you come across in your work and your journey in life?
I would say, what my own struggle is and what I find in others is the disconnect between the mind and body. And there's so many things that interrupt that in our external world and our internal world and cultural and societal pressures. So I really feel like both in my health coaching practice and my yoga practice, a huge focus of mine is to kind of restore and nurture that mind-body connection and really listening to ourselves from within. So yeah, that is kind of what I find most in that's my biggest focus in my practice and with my clients.
Think that's where you and I share an awful lot because you and I have come to the realization that it's the internal, not the external, that is important. And we've talked a lot about consciousness and intuition and knowing ourselves. And the distractions to trying to do that are just enormous. Such a busy
Same.
world. Can I ask you from a yogi's perspective? You've obviously got the beauty of having members of the community in your studio on a regular basis. What do you notice when you see people in the studio about their ability to be internal or external?
Um, I think that the yoga community I'm in is unique because it is a community of people from the mountains, and so they're in general pretty active, and maybe a little competitive. So I love it in a way because I love teaching yoga on an active level, like an active vinyasa class. And I love equally to challenge those active people to find stillness. So find stillness in that busy asana practice. Um, and because I think it's symbolic of life. So that's what I really kind of focus on in our practices and in guiding them on their yoga journey. And yeah, I think that's a challenge for everyone. It's a challenge for me to find stillness, to make stillness in the busy lives that we lead. So
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think the beauty of our relationship is that we remind each other that that stillness and that pausing is that's where everything happens. And where nothing happens is when we're just chasing our tails, if you like, out in the world, being influenced by the outside. And especially for that younger generation, I think the social media influence, that external mirror that's not really a mirror at all, creates a huge amount of distraction. Let me ask you about stillness again, because do you think it's so hard to find it?
I'm reading this book right now called 4,000 Weeks because that's apparently the average lifespan for people.
Wow.
And I think for most people, if you ask them how many weeks do you have, they probably think it's a lot more than 4,000. And one of the things I've been sharing most recently is that I love from the book is that, 100 years ago when technology was just like at the forefront and people were kind of anticipating how amazing, technology would progress and make our lives more efficient. And they said, you know what's going to happen in the future? We're all like a whole day's work is going to be condensed in 15 minutes, which by the way has happened. And we're all going to work for 15 minutes. And the rest of our day, we're going to have like at leisure and we're going to do the things we love and enjoy. And I find that hilarious because as like someone who I would say suffers with the ailment of the need of having the need of productivity and control. This is like my biggest issue, right? And so what humanity has done is we've become more efficient, but instead of filling our free time with things that really fill up our cup, we get a little bit addicted to this efficiency. And so finding stillness in today's world and what is, by society standards, kind of unacceptable to be still. We just want to be efficient. And we're on this, we're on this kick. We're so stoked that we've gotten this much done. And again, what that does is then that sets the precedent for us. And so then if we have a day where we are still, we maybe label that as laziness or something negative. So we have everything going against us. So yeah, I just like to share that that kind of story of 15 minutes. And I think about that in my day. I'm like, am I even carving out 15 minutes of stillness? Can I even do that? So yeah.
I absolutely love that. Stillness versus laziness. I think if we were to quiz any of the friends, family, and clients that we've got, I think they would all admit to really struggling with that as a concept. And it's sad, isn't it? Because you and I know when we have taken stillness together, especially when we've engaged in prayer and meditation, that that's where all the joy, that's where everything happens.
Yeah.
And we miss the moment daily.
Yeah. And I would go even further and say not even just joy, but also finding perspective and focus, actually, because I think so often we get caught up in the busyness that sometimes we're so focused on completing something, our priorities are out of line, and I find that in my daily life with my children, and I don't, what's important to me is spending time with them. But often when I'm in the mode of, I've got to get all this done, I am not prioritizing what's really important to me, which is to be with my kids and be present. So it's not just finding joy in the stillness, but it's also finding perspective and priorities. So it's not just like you're missing out on joy. You're really missing out on everything by missing that.
I'm making notes because I feel like that's a podcast series coming on. I mean, it was beautifully put. Priorities, perspective, productivity, and stillness. I mean, it's the perfect recipe for human being, not human doing. But it seems to be almost impossible to achieve in today's world. And you and I are sat here, obviously we're not living in cities so much. We're really pursuing an alternative lifestyle, if you like. And still, it's hard to get to.
Lindsay, you and I are human doings. That's why.
human doings, talking about how we'd like to be human beings.
Right,
And
exactly.
we're on this quest, and I think this is why it's so interesting. The quest for human being, and we miss the mark. I mean, I miss the mark every day. I'll be honest with you. Those
Me too.
golden moments are few and far between, which makes me feel very sad on reflection. But of course, if I distract myself enough with, I must do a podcast, I must forward my business, I must continue with my, my parenting aspirations or my home or whatever I'm doing, it covers it up. It's a sort of sticking plaster. Tell me a little bit about your experience with retreats, and also your thoughts on people's desire to escape on retreats, because I see this becoming a real thing. And I wonder where we might see that going in the next 5, 10 years.
Hmm. Um, my experience teaching yoga on retreats, is that, and the retreats that I've taught in are rather specific, um, in that they are maybe not your bulk standard, um, retreat that's like, oh, get away and have a lovely time. It's quite specific in that it is about a reset, and it's a much deeper retreat facilitated by people either with a background in psychology or professional coaching or something like that. So there's a depth to the retreats, which I love. I love that, you know. I mean, I love all retreats, but those are kind of the ones, the real transformational ones are the ones that I'm drawn to. And so my experience is that everyone's there to push the reset button, and so many are there to recover from burnout, you know? And I think it's this lack of stillness, this busyness. They've been on this treadmill of of the human doing for a long time, and you know, they haven't taken that time to reprioritize and ask themselves what really brings them joy. um Even finding those things that in terms of self-care, because I've noticed like some of the people on the retreats are like, oh, I don't really take time to think about the nutrition in my food, or the things that I'm eating, or think about moving my body every day, or to you and I, it may be more basic things, but it's also a way for them to try different things, and they can kind of assess what part of the retreat, what part of that self-care has served them most. And it's always wonderful because I keep in touch with a lot of the clients in the retreats. Which bits of that have really over time kind of changed and improved their lives. So that's kind of been my experience on retreats.
Can you think of any stories that you'd be willing to share of the biggest aha moment somebody ever had by taking some time out?
I'd have to think about that one. Um, yeah, there was a woman who came on one of the retreats who had MS, and I think some other pretty serious medical issues. Um, and I think for someone who suffers with chronic illness, like self-care is not really optional, you know? I mean, it's not optional for any of us, but especially those people. So to find them delighting in these new priorities that they've set for themselves, and I follow them on Instagram, and I kind of see what they're up to. I think that's amazing, because if someone's in chronic pain, and then that transfers, of course, into like emotional pain, and then to see all of that really shift and see those light bulb moments in the retreats, and then just see their lives get so much better. I mean, that's kind of what it's all about for me. So I would say this one particular person was really inspiring to watch, and continue to watch to see grow.
I love that you've shared that, and I really appreciate you remembering that moment, and also knowing that you're holding that woman in your thoughts, actually, because I I've had the pleasure and the pain of working with clients who have health anxiety or long-term health issues, and we're also seeing sophrology being used for pain management. And this also layers in with a week where I've had some dealings, some interesting dealings actually with the NHS, for various reasons. And medicalised healthcare is a really interesting discussion point. It's not something that we'll delve into now, but you and I come at it from a slightly alternative view. But it really isn't alternative. This is a sort of a behavior change, a way of thinking about who am I, what am I dealing with, and what can I do in my personal agency around taking control of my symptoms, my situation. And it sounds
Yes.
like that lady was very proactive.
Yeah, she was. And I actually like to use the term, I think alternative sounds negative. And I've heard people use that, but I normally correct people and I say, no, it's holistic. And I feel like holistic is this word that is growing in people's vocabularies and mind that I think it's important to use. And I even see it on like some doctors' websites now, like proper, GP type doctors. So I love when I hear stories of Western doctors using holistic approaches because we are a whole body. We are not one arm alone. We are all integrated and we have one heart and one nervous system. So yeah, I like to use the word holistic instead of alternative.
I love that definition because you're right. I sometimes read things and think, oh, it sounds a bit mumbo jumbo-y, and it's not. There's lots and lots of research papers, peer-reviewed research papers out there that talk about the benefits of some of the therapies we're talking about: body movement, nutrition, meditation, visualization, breath work. But when we present those solutions, if you like, to clients, I still see a desire for a tablet. Give me a pill. And I think that's often caused by frustration. It's caused by lack of information. It's caused by a sort of just a real desperation in people that I've got this situation I'm trying to fix, and I don't know what to do, and where's the solution, and I don't feel like they ever often don't feel supported and held in that to explore, like you say, a holistic approach, of course, with medication as appropriate, but it often feels like a real desire from people. Where is the tablet for this problem I've got?
Yeah, it's a quick fix,
I'm
isn't it?
also seeing that in we've both got parents who are getting older. I'm seeing that in that slightly older generation where they're beginning to take medication, or they're perhaps taking lifetime medications, and I've begun to ask questions. Do we need all of these things? Is this important? Is this just the expectation as I'm coming up to 50? You're the generation behind me. Is that what I'm looking at? You're going to need this medication. You need menopause or arthritis or whatever it is you've got. And I've got really mixed views on this personally. It's not my area of expertise, but it does seem like the sort of given.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, oh, yeah, the pharmaceutical world is a whole nother topic, isn't it? Um, but I think it just depends on who you have as a practitioner as well. If you have a practitioner that is solving the one symptom, and then maybe not wondering about more of a long-term solution or a holistic solution. There's red flags there for me. Um, so yeah, I mean, whole rabbit hole we could go down with pharmaceuticals.
I think it's another discussion for another day, and perhaps with a more informed practitioner, because you and I are very much in that space of providing a holistic, complementary route. That brings us really neatly onto the subject of sleep,
Oh, my favorite.
because I know that you and I are like the sleep police, and it's it's crucial. Tell me about your journey with sleep, perhaps as a broader picture, but also your journey with sleep using sophrology, because that's a really key part to the work that we have experienced together.
Mm. Well, my journey with sleep is that I've always been a really good sleeper until I had kids. And then everything changed. And obviously I have like little spider senses. in the night and I wake up with any little noise, and then find it really hard to go back to sleep. So, I'm definitely on a sleep journey, but it has improved vastly in the past year, given our work together with Sophrology, and mostly sleep specific because of the Whoop and how it has analyzed my sleep and keeps me accountable for getting to sleep on time.
Yes. We love a bit of data, and I love checking up on you. And I especially love it when you travel because that creates another dynamic. Shifting
Mm.
time zones, children waking up, hotel bedrooms,
Yeah.
and sleep is very quickly impacted by any changes. Like you say, any noise. A storm at
Mm.
night, for example, in the mountains, disrupts
Mhm.
everybody's sleep, whether they know it or not. And I see it on all those clients using Whoop. We have a big electrical storm. You can see it's woken people up. They're not aware of it,
Mhm.
but you are still disturbed. Sarah, give me your top
Mm.
3 tips for sleep if you are traveling or changing environments. I'm putting you on the spot now.
Yeah, that's okay. This is a my recent top tip for me. So I can't recommend this for everybody, but taking magnesium supplement has made a massive difference. And I take it in powder form, so I put it in a drink and I drink it like a cocktail at night. And I drink it over like an hour or so period. So this is like I look forward to this and it's become this like sleep ritual of mine. So this is extreme. This has worked beautifully for me. I actually had this recommended to me by my OBGYN. And she said that this was a great way to get the body to absorb the magnesium because I have like the magnesium oil spray and it kind of worked, not really. So anyway, this is like my most recent top tip for me has been drinking magnesium, and that has been amazing, and it has made a huge difference. Two is be disciplined about your routine. So what I've discovered in the Whoop is that the more routine you can be around your sleep, the higher quality sleep you're going to get. So if you, a couple nights a week end up watching a movie with your partner or whatever, and you go to bed at like 11:30 instead of 10, it's going to make a huge difference actually. So getting into that routine, if you're really desperate to get better sleep, be really regimented about the time that you are going to bed and also the time you are waking up. And the third is just get 8 hours. Whatever you can. Like if all else fails, just try to get 8 hours regardless. So yeah, those would be my top tips.
Well, thank you, because I think that gives people some really good takeaways. And the number of clients I see who say, "Do you know what, Lindsay, I'm fine on 6." Well, you might be now, but the reality is this is a cumulative effect. And we're seeing some really interesting data about cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, and dementia, and being very much linked to poor quality and lack of sleep cumulatively over a lifetime. So we're ahead of the game here, Sarah. The fact that we do feel like if you can get 8 hours, you're rocking it, really.
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
I ask you how sophrology has benefited you? Because you and I have had a great time working together, using the Whoop as well, and we've been in the clinic here together. What's your most or the thing you like to share most about that?
Well, I'm excited to have this conversation because we haven't really had this conversation yet. So for me, because in yoga practice, we practice pranayama, so there's a breathing practice. I always thought, oh, well, breath work will be really similar. But what's so beautiful about your breath work is that there's such a huge part in using your imagination, which is not, as an adult, even though I kind of do creative things, is not nearly, it's almost like training your imagination again, and the way that you guide it is really beautiful. So the breath work in general, like pranayama or the kind of structured breath work, I'm just totally on board with, and I think it's wonderful to keep you in the present moment and to keep you grounded and keep you still. But adding the dimension of um, the facilitated breath work, where you are really opening your mind to just different parts of the brain. I can almost feel it. when you facilitate it is fascinating and very new. And so that was kind of my experience, I suppose, with sophrology. It's just a really new dimension. There's so many amazing parts of our mind that are so subconscious. There's so much going on up there that we're just completely unaware of. And so if we really want to create change in our lives, in our character, in our habits, awareness is key, right? So diving into the mind sounds so much maybe easier just to say, yep, get to know your mind. Well, how do you do that on a practical level? Well, there's sophrology for that, and I love that. And it also teaches you about the power of your imagination and when you are able to build your awareness or maybe build a reality that you would like for yourself, kind of the power of attraction or the power of positive thinking, but in a very creative way as you do. That's a very powerful method.
I'm so delighted you've shared that, because as a practitioner, it's very hard to know um, what's the bit that people really love. And when Caicedo designed the method in the 1950s, visualization was which is a huge part of sophrology. And like you say, when we go into those visualizations together, and you're being guided, you're just accessing parts of your consciousness that you wouldn't normally go to, and
Yeah.
seeing what comes up. I know that you've been very brave and tackled some of the bigger exercises, but are there any in particular that you think, oh, that was one that really sticks in my mind, or that's one that I've used again and again?
Um, I love the cloud and
Mm,
your bubble. Those are my
yes.
two favorite. So I'll talk about the bubble because I love that. So, what does your protective bubble look like? Like, especially if if your nervous system is in fight or flight, or you are feeling huge levels of stress and anxiety. Um, what does that go into your protective bubble? And I think that's so important, right? Because I think the go-to for most people, this is certainly the go-to for me when I'm feeling stress and anxiety, is actually just to busy myself more and go into productivity. I'm going to do something to make myself feel better. Not I'm going to feel what I'm feeling, which is really uncomfortable, and actually accept the present moment, accept the reality of my situation, and from there move on. It's so much easier just to get busy and do stuff. So actually, to have like a little bit of a protection from the truth of the reality, to like sit and just visualize what if you could imagine yourself in a protective bubble, what would that be? And I think I remember yours was mohair. It was a mohair bubble, and I always remember that. Was that
Yeah,
you?
lilac mohair is always my what my bubble is made of. I don't. Have you
Yeah.
got a particular substance that
Yeah,
yours is?
absolutely. It's a mochi. Of course it's food. So it's like that. It's basically blitz rice, if you don't know what a mochi is. And so it's this gummy, squishy, it's like thick, but super protective, but super soft because there's like a powder on top. So it's lush.
And isn't that powerful that this is not hypnosis. I'm not um, making suggestions to you. You're coming up with that yourself. And I don't know about you, but every time I do the bubble, and I've been doing it for the last few years as part of my practice, it's always the same.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
coded in there as a neural pathway. That's where I go. I go in this gorgeous mohair bubble. It's probably got a bit of Kevlar in there because it's definitely bulletproof. There's quite a few people that can't get in. There's some negativity that I use to defend myself from it. Uh, and yeah, it's an amazing exercise. Absolutely brilliant. Anything else that springs to mind? If you said to somebody you should try sophrology because, what would you say?
I would say it's to experience your mind in a different way and to open your mind to, gosh, it sounds very sci-fi, but alternate realities. But I think some people don't realize that it is your thoughts that are creating your reality. Some people think reality is just reality, but that's not true. I might see that it's raining outside and it's a miserable day, and someone else might say, oh, it's raining, thank goodness, it's feeding the plants, So it's our thoughts that drive our reality. So if we feel so trapped in our thoughts, which is what happens when our neural pathways are, thinking the same thought again and again, if you can find a facilitator in sophrology to open your mind to thinking about things in a very different visual and more imaginary way, we can understand the power that our brain has over our body, and the power of our thoughts. So if we can learn how to open our minds, change our thoughts, then we can change our own reality.
Thank you. Change your thoughts, change your reality. There is a powerlessness to the alternative. And I think when we step into that reality, that we can control our thoughts and we can control our reality, it makes me feel really confident. I'd love to see this shared more widely, because it does, we seem to have missed the moment. Yet you and I see athletes, and we are, athletes ourselves. We know that mental chatter or mental self-talk can be transformative. You're going headfirst down a hill on a mountain bike, I'm out on a road bike or whatever. If you're thinking, oh, it's all going to be a disaster and I can't do it, well, what happens? Talk to us about the VTT experience.
Totally. Totally. I mean, it's so true. I talk about this with my my mountain biking coach, because I'm still quite new to mountain biking. Still my fourth summer doing it, and it's kind of over. But it is such a mind game. So if you believe in yourself, you're going to be able to do it. And I think skiing's really similar. But yeah, especially with the downhill sports. And this is why I love it. It's because I suppose I love intense sports, um, because I don't have time to think about anything else. This is not like golf. You know? I
Although
can't think.
golfers would disagree with you.
I know, probably. But I physically cannot do anything but think about the road in front of me, the path in front of me. And I'm so in the present moment. So yeah, back to your point about the mind. So you're in this present moment, but if in that moment you have the neural pathways built up where I'm scared, or I can't do this, or whatever you're thinking is what's going to happen. And trust me, I've been over the handlebars many times when I'm thinking that thought. Sometimes it just comes up, but when you say to yourself, and again, I think this is what a great also reason to find a great coach, whether it's someone that is helping you learn a sport, or someone that's walking alongside you in your yoga journey or sophrology journey or whatever, but find someone who you can really trust. And I find that if I'm kind of on the fence about something ahead, and the coach says, Sarah, I know you can do that. I know you can do this. And then I'm like, right, I trust this person, I believe it, and then I can do it. And I love seeing that in action. That is just amazing. Because as long as I think something and I believe something, I can do it. As soon as our mind goes, nope, not happening, then you're either going to go to the handlebars, or if you try, or you're not going to try at all. So I love that.
I think it's a great story, isn't it? Because you know as well as I do, if you think this is going to be a disaster, whatever it is you're doing, especially when it involves a downhill sport, that invariably comes true. If you've done the mental preparation, and we do tons of this in sophrology, event preparation, visualization, what is going to happen when you get there. You imagine that berm coming up, or you imagine that descent, and you're already there before you get there. Your body's prepared, your mind's prepared, you run that neural pathway, and then it creates that physical behavior that allows you to do it.
Yeah. Oh, and on top of that, another thing I love, especially about mountain biking, is that when we're scared, we hold our breath. And
Yes.
I can hear my coach, who knows nothing about sophrology, who's like, Sarah, you cannot hold your breath, you cannot breathe. And I'm like, oh no! So yeah, on top of that, guess what? Breathing really helps.
It's a bonkers thing, isn't it? But clearly when we do that long exhale that we do in yoga, we do it in sophrology, we do it in so many practices, the long exhale
Yeah.
means our body has to go from
Yeah.
fight or flight into rest, and just you simply
Yeah.
can't run away if you're doing a long exhale.
Yeah.
And when we code that in as a mental cue, a physical and a mental cue, to go, I'm okay, just breathe out.
Yeah.
It transformed my red run skiing, and my carving is pretty hopeless, but it certainly made a big difference. If you exhale, oh look, the
Yeah.
turn improves
Yeah.
um,
Totally.
massively. Um, I'd love just to ask you before we close out about visualization and mental preparation with the kids,
Hmm.
because we're parenting at slightly different stages. I'm parenting teens, you're parenting under 10s. Um, Anything that you would say to parents dealing with kids who are anxious, coming up to events that we know that they're a little bit nervous about? What do you do, and what would you say? Do you know what, this has really worked for me?
Gosh, parenting. I am not a professional, but I have read so many books and listened to so many parenting podcasts. If my kid is struggling with something, and we've been through this a lot with both kids, um, just firstly, just conversation and openness with them, and just, allowing the conversation, is already gaining their trust. I've learned. So no topic is off topic, even bad words or whatever. Um, and so if you have that communication and that trust, then you can start conversations like, how is this making you feeling? Like I often with the kids, I start with the emotion. How is this making you feel? I had a situation with my son where he was being bullied, and it was quite bad actually. And so what we would do is we would imagine at home, so we would practice being in that situation again together. I said, okay, so this is happening. Let's imagine that this is happening again. How is this making you feel? We talk about the feeling. And then we say, how would you like to respond? How would you like to respond to, whatever he was saying, defend himself or whatever? And we would practice that. um, and then really importantly, after he practices it, we'd say, and how does that make you feel now? So tying it back to the emotion. Um, so yeah, just practicing really. And that I guess I would call that visualization, but it's like practicing an alternate reality. And that really helped him through that really difficult time, I think. Yeah, I know, really. And I've done that in other situations, but that was a very specific situation where that really helped. It helped him. He was practiced and he had visualized a different situation, where he was taking the action and communicating in a way that he really wanted to, and he was able to execute that the next time.
Love that. That's so powerful. Thank you. It's so easy as a parent to go into telling, well, what you should do is this, what I would do is that. And I feel exactly the same. When we say, actually, how did you feel? Okay, how do you want to feel? And then what will that look like?
Yeah.
You're empowering them to be in that situation and be prepared. And I think the same for you and I. How are we feeling right now? Oh, awful, whatever. As soon as we voice that, and there's tons and tons of data
Mm.
out there that says as soon as we articulate our emotions, we don't just say fine, okay, we go passive aggressive or silent, but we actually say, do you know what? This is making me feel really uncomfortable, upset, angry, anxious, whatever. Energetically, we're releasing it, and we're
Yeah, we
putting it.
name it to tame it.
Exactly. Name it to tame it every time. But something I struggle with clients, even those, I deal with a lot of men. Most of my clients are normally in their 40s, and if not 50s. They often have no idea how they're actually feeling. They just can't tell me. I don't know what these feelings are. Do I
Mm.
have any feelings? And that baffles me, because it's a
Mm.
practice. And I guess if we haven't been taught as kids, it's been suppressed, or our needs have not been recognized, or we haven't verbalized it, then yeah, where do we go with that?
It's really tough. I think I don't know if it's generational or not. And of course we have so much more information on how our emotions are driving our thoughts. Our thoughts are driving, our actions, etc. Um, and I think, and I see this in extended family. Fortunately, not my parents, but I see it. Negative emotion can be very uncomfortable for people. So then in the parenting situation, um, how that manifests itself is if anyone is suffering, the parent will either, um, do whatever it takes to make that child happy again. So some people would call that spoiling, or whatever, or they do the opposite, which is that is an inappropriate, they say that's an inappropriate emotion to have. We don't have that emotion, and they suppress it. So you either learn the tactic of avoiding these difficult emotions or suppressing. And that is kind of where we are today. And like you were talking about your clients, this is probably where it came from. It's yeah. I'm trying not to name this person, but there's a person very close in my life who was raised this way.
I think it's really common, and I've just been I had the pleasure of watching a TV series called Love is Blind with my kids, and I noticed that these millennials, I think there was a lot, they were able to really articulate how they felt about this. It was a dating show, and I was really, really impressed with the language and the granularity of the emotional experience. The bit that I couldn't quite work out is, do they then know what to do with it?
Mm,
So they're great about saying, I want, I feel, la la la, but I couldn't.
mm,
I wonder if there was a piece missing there, and this is just a generational shift that we're seeing.
mm.
Fascinating. I think this is definitely another podcast. I wanted to ask you just about one more thing, because I have really struggled with this, and again, it's not something we've discussed it a little bit, but I wanted to ask you about the concept of intuitive eating,
Oh, good.
because I think I've told you before that my body was so turned off, and I still have to really consciously turn it back on, that
Mm,
a lot of the time I don't even know if I'm hungry, and I don't even know what's in my mouth.
mm.
And I know that this is an area of particular interest and expertise of yours.
Where do I begin with that?
Big question.
Yes, it's huge. So briefly for the podcast, my background is that I really struggled with my weight. I also struggled with, and I would say it's kind of all down to my mind-body connection. Um, in my teens and in my 20s. And it took me a very long time to learn how to intuitively eat and listen to my hunger scale. This is interrupted by a myriad of things in society, um, fast food and, you know, processed food and sugar is a huge inhibitor in terms of there is something when you consume sugar that stops the signal from your tummy to your brain saying, "Hey, I'm full here." So sugar stops that connection. And again, this is not to say sugar doesn't have a place in your life, but it really shouldn't have a place in your life at every meal, because you're going to struggle with that. And so that's one of them. Another one is that the diet industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so we are hearing messages from every corner of the world and from every book, from every Instagram saying, this is how we should eat. This is how we should eat. And all of that is assuming that there's one correct way to eat and for everybody. For the most part, maybe some are talking about more intuitive eating, but in general, broad strokes, diets are like this. And that comes for most people with, if you are trying to adhere to this, a heap load of willpower and restriction, which is the opposite of intuitive eating. So it's just a very messy business. So there's really, really good reason why many people find it very difficult to intuitively eat. I have found yoga a wonderful tool to help me connect with my body. Again, this is just back to the mind-body connection. And just over time, I have kind of found like a rhythm. And I also, a lot of it has to do with what is my reality in terms of how am I feeling about my body? Am I creating the thought, oh, my body is horrible, or oh, my body is heavy today, or whatever? I no longer allow those thoughts to come up. It is, oh, I just neutralize it all. I kind of used to get caught up in a vortex of negative thoughts around my body image. So it does take a lot of training. It takes a lot of time. It's such a worthwhile journey for anyone who wants to go on that journey. And certainly the way that I guide health coaching is very individual. I definitely believe that there is no one correct way to eat. I feel like we all um, flourish on different different types of macro and micronutrients, and that it is just a wonderful journey to embark on if you're up for it. And it's a wonderful way to nourish yourself and get to know yourself and get to trust yourself again. I think that's the other thing that the world that we live in, we become to distrust our bodies. Why is our body doing this? Why is our body doing that? When actually we are given one body in this world, and it's amazing. Look at we've got, some of us have 10 fingers and 10 toes. What a gift that is, So, anyway, intuitive eating is a wonderful way to nourish yourself and just be present with what is as well. So,
I'd love to talk more about that another time, Sarah, because it's a fascinating field and it's so deeply connected to this principle of mind-body connection. And I've actively avoided using the word mindfulness on this show today because it's been so, I think, misused and misunderstood. And it's the mind-body connection that is the key to unlocking all of this. Of course, what does that actually mean? How do we do that? Where are the tools? And you're a super toolkit-based practitioner, parent, friend, community member, as am I. Where are the tools that we need to tackle some of these challenges once we realise how we actually feel? Sarah, it's been an absolute joy. I've got a million things we could talk about, but I'm aware of our time and also our listeners' time. Anybody that wants to contact either of us, there will be links in the show notes to both of us. And is there anything else you'd like to add about sophrology, the Whoop Band, mind-body connection, or any of the topics that we've covered today?
I don't think so, Lindsay. I think we covered it all. Just that I guess I would encourage anyone listening to, if there's like one takeaway from today or one way that they can help themselves, it's like find one thing today. Like, don't get overwhelmed. You don't need all the answers today because it's not going to happen. Just seek that one next thing that is going to help you along with your wellness journey. What is one thing you can do today to nourish yourself? And maybe it's going to bed at 9 o'clock tonight. Maybe it's just drinking a whole heap of water, like you don't have to conquer it all in one day. Do one thing at a time, one thing today. What one thing can you do today to nourish yourself, to make yourself feel a little better?
I'd certainly add to that, the one thing you can do before you even do that thinking is just be still and see what happens. So almost being still without thinking will give you clues as to the one thing you should be prioritizing on. In fact, I wonder if I might record a short audio on a sophrology practice to do that, because that's where it all starts, in the stillness. We haven't talked about identity at all today, so I'm going to put that on my list for next time. You did mention that we're all made uniquely and specifically for a purpose, and which is why intuition is so important. But of course, I think we also forget that, I should look like whoever I've seen on Instagram of my age. Why do I not have a six-pack at the age of 40 something? We forget we're just perfect. We're exactly where we're meant to be, perfectly made in today, in this present moment. It's exciting to be a human being.
It is, and not a human doing.
Amazing. It was wonderful to spend time with you. I appreciate you so much, and I look forward to the next time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah.